Radio. You're listening to 1680 The Crow.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to 1680 The Crow. Welcome to our first show of 2023. I'm your host, Mac Fleet, and I'll be bringing you your news and sports headlines to 12 o'clock today. BC Premier David Eby is holding a press conference in Vancouver today to announce new support for nurses. Our reporter Ryan Bailey has more.
It is expected that the Premier will announce new measures to attract more nurses to British Columbia. This will include more support for educational facilities and incentives for students to enroll. This comes at a time where the COVID-19 pandemic, influenza, and other illnesses have put pressure on the province's healthcare system. The Premier will be joined by Health Minister Adrian Dix and Parliamentary Secretary for Long-Term Care Harwinder Sandhu. Ryan Bailey, 1680 The Crow.
The BC government announced that they are allowing more items to be recycled within the province's recycling system. Our reporter Chadis Leo has the story.
Many BC residents will now be allowed to recycle even more plastic items in their blue bins. In the provincial press release, Aman Singh, Parliamentary Secretary for Environment, stated that our government is working to ensure that people in BC can help keep their communities and the environment healthy. By expanding our nation-leading recycling system to include more products, we are keeping more plastic out of our waterways and landfills. Additionally, formerly non-recyclable items such as aluminum foil, metal storage tins, and flexible plastic carry-out shopping bags are now eligible for recycling. Chadis Leo, 1680 The Crow.
For more information, we now go live to our reporter, Chadis Leo. Chadis, are these regulations separate from the federal ban on single-use plastics?
Yeah, thanks, Mac. Yes, they are. That ban came into effect federally on December 22nd of last year. These provincial regulatory changes cover a broader category of single-use products.
Are there any other unique items that the province hopes to eventually add to the recycle list?
Yes, there are a few other products that the province plans to add on to the list over the next 4 years. Some of those items include mattresses, electric vehicle batteries, medical sharps, and as well as compressed fuel canisters.
Thank you so much for your time today, Chadis. After a long wait, Canada is officially purchasing the F-35 stealth fighter jets to replace their aging CF-18s. Defense Minister Anita Anand made the announcement early this morning.
With Russia's illegal and unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine and China's increasingly assertive behavior in the Indo-Pacific, this project has taken on heightened significance, especially given the importance of interoperability with our allies.
The government says Canada will buy 88 F-35s. The cost is said to be estimated around $19 billion. The first carrier is set to be delivered in 2026. There were previous plans to purchase the planes back in 2010 when Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister. A recent petition in protest of the parking rate increase at BCIT has recently eclipsed 1,300 signatures. The petition started last week after BCIT announced that they will be jacking up their parking price at the Burnaby Campus from $5.50 a day to $9.25. Meanwhile, the downtown campus will experience a price hike from $12.75 to $12.25 a day. BCIT has announced that it will begin collaborating with Tesla Start to form training service technicians for electric vehicles. Reporter Jasper Chu has more.
BCIT's new program would allow students to become certified and employed at Tesla service centers across Canada as service technicians. According to the announcement, the program will offer a combination of hands-on, theoretical, and self-paced learning in a curriculum covering 12 subjects. Tune in to follow what this new program will offer and teach students. This is Jasper Chu for 1680 The Crow.
A pastor who was servicing a Metro Vancouver church has been charged with sexual assault and sexual interference against children. Police in New Westminster say they began the investigation after multiple reports came to them. A police news release says the offenses are alleged to have taken place between 2017 and 2021. It says after a lengthy investigation by the department's major crime unit, 3 charges each of sexual assault and sexual interference have been laid against Pastor Edwin Alvarez. Police haven't released which Christian church the pastor was caring for, other than to say it was a small Metro Vancouver location. The statement says Alvarez was arrested with the help of the Saanich Police Department on January 4th. Critics are repeating their calls to Toronto police to be defunded, even as the force asks for a $50 million budget hike. Dozens of parties are expected to speak today at a meeting of the city's Police Services Board. Writer and community organizer Desmond Cole was the first speaker.
Increase your budget. You're already doing too much. You're already killing too many people. You're already harming and wounding and traumatizing too many people while you ask for more.
The proposed spending hike was announced last week by Toronto Mayor John Tory and would bring the force's total budget to just over $1.1 billion. The last 3 cattle that had been on the run in Quebec since July were finally rounded up Saturday. It took over 45 days for all 15 animals to get returned to their owner in Saint-Sevier. Union officials plan to meet to try to determine who will be responsible for capturing future runaway farm animals. Canadian bank CEOs say they're able to adapt the higher credit requirements the banking regulator has set in response to the rising economic risks. The heads of Canada's big banks are talking at a conference in Toronto, while Peter Routledge, who heads the regulator, said he planned to be proactive to minimize concerns about the banking industry.
We would rather err on the side of acting too early than be criticized for acting too late. That means that we accept the risks of engaging too early to minimize the risks that stem from being slow off the mark. This, we believe, is how OSFI will help to maintain and ensure resilience and contribute to public confidence in the Canadian financial system.
Last month, the regulator increased the amount of money banks have to keep on hand as rising interest rates have put pressure on borrowers and increased the chances of a recession. Brazilian authorities vowed Monday to protect democracy and punish thousands of supporters of ex-president Jair Bolsonaro, who stormed and trashed the nation's highest seats of power in chaos with striking similarities to January 2021 insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. The protesters swarmed into Congress, the Supreme Court, and Presidential Palace on Sunday. Many have said they want the Brazilian army to restore Bolsonaro to power and oust the newly inaugurated Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Justice Minister Flávio Gino said the acts amounted to terrorism and coup-mongering, and that the police have begun tracking those who paid for the buses that transported protesters to the Capitol. Karen Travers has reaction from North American leaders.
President Biden, in a joint statement with the leaders of Canada and Mexico, says the U.S. condemns the January 8th attacks on Brazil's democracy and on the peaceful transfer of power. The 3 leaders writing together, quote, "We stand with Brazil as it safeguards its democratic institutions. Our governments support the free will of the people of Brazil." President Biden said he and the President of Mexico and Prime Minister of Canada look forward to working with the new leader of Brazil, President Lula, on delivering for their countries, the Western Hemisphere, and beyond. Karen Travers, ABC News, traveling with the President in Mexico City.
The Biden administration says Iran's sale of lethal drones to Russia for use in its ongoing invasion of Ukraine means the country may be contributing to widespread war crimes. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan leveled the charge against Iran on Monday as he spoke to reporters accompanying President Joe Biden on a trip to Mexico. While it did not signal a policy shift, it marks some of the sharpest U.S. rhetoric against Iran since it began providing weapons to Russia to support its nearly 3-year-long war in Ukraine. The U.S. and European partners are looking further ostracize both nations in the court of public opinion. Russian oil company Lukoil says it has reached an agreement for the sale of a refinery plant in Sicily. Thousands of refinery workers have feared job losses due to the European embargo on Russian oil stemming from the war in Ukraine. The company's statement on Monday said that the sale of ISAB SLR's refinery is planned to be completed by the end of March, pending various approvals by authorities, particularly the Italian government. The agreement calls for the refinery to be sold to GOI Energy. The refinery employs 3,500 people and indirectly supports the jobs of 6,500 others. The workers at the refinery protested in late 2022, fearing for their future. About 20% of Italy's oil is refined at the plant. Lukoil said that under the agreement, the new owners will retain jobs. Federal prosecutors in New York have begun laying out their case against Robert Haddon, a former gynecologist accused of sexually abusing scores of patients over 2 decades, including the wife of former presidential candidate Andrew Yang. Now,
Stay tuned for more on BCIT's 1680 The Crow.
This is sports on 1680 The Crow.
Welcome back to 1680 The Crow. It's now time for your daily sports update with your host, Mac Fleet. In women's hockey, Canada aims to extend its dominant start to the U18 Women's World Hockey Championship when it faces host country Sweden today. The Canadians kicked off the tournament with a resounding 8-0 win over Finland yesterday. Meanwhile, Sweden fell 6-3 to the United States in its opener. The NFL season concluded Sunday night, and we have our first coaching casualty since then. The Arizona Cardinals have fired head coach Cliff Kingsbury after a 4-13 season. Kingsbury signed an extension last year after the Cardinals made the playoffs for the first time in his tenure. The Cardinals went 28-37-1 in 4 years with Kingsbury. Cardinals general manager Steve Keim has stepped away from the team to focus on his health, the team announced via Twitter this morning. In college football, TCU's unlikely run to the college football playoff championship has come at a most fortuitous time for the Big 12. The third-ranked Horned Frogs face the number 1 Georgia on Monday night at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California for the college football playoff title. The Big 12 seemed in real danger of falling apart or being relegated to second-tier status during the summer of 2021, when it was revealed flagship members Texas and Oklahoma were planning to leave the league and join the Southeastern Conference. TCU became the first Big 12 team to win a playoff game, and it's first from the league to play for a national title since 2009. Here's some CFL news. Canadian offensive lineman Zach Williams signed a 2-year contract extension with the Calgary Stampeders on Monday. Williams, a 2019 third-round CFL draft pick, was eligible to become a free agent next month. Williams started in 18 regular season games at left guard for the Stamps in 2022. Calgary offensive line allowed a league-low 17 sacks while the Stampeders averaged a CFL-high 135 rushing yards per game. In basketball, Kevin Durant has a sprained right knee, and the Brooklyn Nets say he will miss at least 2 weeks. Durant was hurt Sunday in the Nets' 102-101 victory in Miami and had an MRI on Monday that revealed an isolated sprain in his MCL. The team said he would be reevaluated in 2 weeks. Durant has led the Nets to 18 wins in their last 20 games and a 27-3 overall record, a game behind Boston for the best record in the NBA. In soccer, the Vancouver Whitecaps have bolstered their backline, signing Uruguayan center back Matthias Laborda. The club announced the move Monday as the Caps and teams across the MLS officially opened training camps. The Whitecaps say Laborda's contract runs through 2025 with the club option for the 2026 season, and that he will occupy an international roster slot. In other news, Welsh player Gareth Bale announced his retirement from soccer today via social media. Bale's last game was for Wales during the World Cup. Bale finishes his career with the Wales record for men's players' appearances with 111 games and goals with 41. In tennis, Canada's Eugenie Bouchard fails in the first-round qualifier at the Australian Open. Canada's Bouchard dropped a 6-3, 1-6, and 6-4 decision to American Ashlyn Kruger in the first-round qualifying play Monday at the Australian Open. Bouchard from Montreal gave up a service break in the final game as her 18-year-old opponent closed out the match in 1 hour and 53 minutes. Kruger is ranked 183 in the world. That was your sports update at 12 o'clock. Thank you so much for tuning in to 1680 The Crow with Mac Fleet.
Now it's time for the comment.
We gotta get down, right? As much as it sounds like a terrible piece of advice, we want to get our face in front of the ball, right? Obviously glove out front, but face always wants to be, but exactly.
As the cold winter winds down with spring just around the corner, Owen McBride's private coaching co. finds themselves busier than ever training indoors.
Yeah, so PCC started essentially when I was working in the sports world in terms of playing. and noticing how many kids around me were starting to drop out and get fatigued and feel too tired to play or start losing their interest in it. So essentially, I just started coaching and doing some things like that, and then started to realize like this is a legitimate business opportunity, but we're trying to do something a little bit different, which is more focused on fun.
Take it slow, take it slow. Smooth is fast, smooth is fast. There it is. Good job, buddy.
Owen started Private Coaching Co. early in the pandemic and puts an emphasis on improving on kids' fitness and mental health.
Kids aren't playing outside anymore, so kids aren't developing the fundamental movement skills and the skills that you would get playing outside and jumping over trees and fences, right? So when we do our sessions, we're focused on developing full-blown athletes, multi-sport athletes, kids that can move in every direction and do whatever they need to do.
Okay, we're gonna do this one 2 more times, and we're gonna move to 2 feet in each. All right, on you.
I think sports is the kind of the pillar for everything that we do going forward, and it's something that we can learn a lot of valuable life lessons and skills from. So as it pertains to the mental health side of things, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic, or we're hopefully towards the end of a pandemic. There's a lot of kids sitting inside being, you know, not able to get the daily physical activity that they need. When they can come and do this sort of thing, they go home feeling better. They're ready to do their homework. They're more willing to do chores and sit around the house and actually help out because they've got the energy out and they're feeling better, and we're releasing the good hormones and that sort of thing.
For Coach Matt Lane, helping kids reach their full potential is a reward in itself.
You know, I've had a lot of fun working with kids, you know, ranging in age. You know, I have a lot of fun with the younger kids, mainly just focus on having fun with them and subtly introducing the fundamentals. And then with the older kids, you know, I've got to work dry land with a hockey team with a group of 14-year-olds. It's awesome working with kids those age as well. You know, you push them a little bit harder.
Private Coaching Co. prides themselves on their ability to connect with young athletes through young and vibrant coaches.
Especially in our ability to connect with youth and be, like I've said, you know, we want to be role models and somebody that they can look up to and strive to be like. When you're training with somebody that is in the situation that you're striving to be or is doing the things that you want to strive to do, it's very easy to be motivated and interested and excited to come to training, right? So we, at the end of the day, want to get to the point where a kid can get in the car and go, I'm so excited to go and train with Matt, or I'm so excited to go train with Rio, not just because of the sport, but because of the connection that we've created.
Owen's looking to continue growing Private Coaching Co. as the pandemic slows down. He hopes to train and inspire young athletes across North America.
This is 1680 The Crow, and you're listening to our feature presentation.
Culture can be defined as all that a people are and do at any particular time and place.
Train of 38 grinder, track section 2451.
The city is the focal point of a culture. In British Columbia, the Vancouver region. Vancouver, like all cities, is a dynamic entity pursuing a lifestyle which reflects yet transcends the lifetimes of the people whose interactions create the city. There comes a time in the life of a city, a point of maturity, when its growth and the growth of human interaction within it begin to conflict. The need for mobility calls for fundamental change.
And that change came in the form of today's episode of the Crow Chronicles, the Vancouver SkyTrain. I'm Richard Davis, a journalist who writes primarily about transportation and labor issues, and I am one of the 400,000 people, estimated, who rides the SkyTrain every single day. And I'm here with my co-host, Nicholas Poitras. Nick, why are you here?
I am also here because I am also one of the 400,000 people that ride the SkyTrain every day. I'm also a journalist, mainly a motorsport journalist. However, I very much enjoy talking about SkyTrain. I think transit is a very interesting thing for me. And for Richard too. So much, in fact, that we're the type of people who would scheme up a fantasy SkyTrain line at lunch. But the main thing about it, though, as much as it might seem very, very weird to talk about it, we're not alone in this very interesting topic when we're talking about transit, especially SkyTrain.
Yeah, we spoke to Rob Chu. He is unequivocally the guy when it comes to transit history.
Absolutely the guy.
Rob is the guy. Before we talk to Rob and get him to take us back to what it was like on the day, Nick, what do you know about SkyTrain on the opening day and the history of it?
To be completely honest, not much. All I really know is that it was built around the time of Expo 86. And when that was happening, they're like, hey, let's use this as like the main thing to showcase. And then that's all I know. And then they built all the lines, the Millennium Line, the extensions, and everything that we know now.
Yeah. So let's go to Rob, and he's going to tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so basically we're going to go into the development then on how we ended up with the SkyTrain. So way back when transit started in Vancouver in the 1890s, it was just all streetcars. And eventually the streetcar system grew and grew, but things got expensive, and expanding tracks wasn't cost effective in some places, so they started introducing gas buses. And then eventually diesel buses started coming in as well. And then it got to the point after the Second World War where it was just so expensive to maintain a streetcar system, most North American cities got rid of them, with the exception of places like Toronto. And you've got San Francisco that maintained a few lines there. Same with Philadelphia as well. So Vancouver, unfortunately, lost pretty much all of the streetcar systems. And by 1954, the last one, I can't remember, it was 1954 55, one of those years, the last streetcar ran down Hastings Street. And then the last interurban line ran in 1958. So that was done. Everybody's in their cars now. Everyone's driving. Freeways are coming. Everybody's going to move out to the suburbs. So that was the next big thing, or the next trend to happen in the 1950s and 60s, as with most North American cities. So you got all that traffic congestion and all. Vancouver wanted to build a network of freeways, just like LA and other cities. Had all these plans out. It's going to go right through the middle of Chinatown and Gastown. There's going to be a third crossing just by Stanley Park there to get people to the upper levels highway. Basically, there was a lot of opposition, and if that happened, a lot of these neighborhoods would have been destroyed. So basically, with all that opposition, we had to actually, City Council had to actually stop the freeway plans, and basically that whole thing was defeated. And then there was a need for rapid transit still. So, okay, to solve the problem, we have this new Burrard area rapid ferry that they're thinking of, and this is in the early 70s, that would cross from downtown Vancouver to somewhere in North Vancouver. Okay, let's get that started. Okay, that solves that one. We're working on that. But then there's something missing for the rest of the region. We need rail or something or express buses. So that's where they decide, okay, let's test out a light rail car from Germany. Let's buy one, bring it over. Never really got anywhere. Change in government and all. Mm-hmm. And basically, when the years went by, they decided, okay, let's try out this one here. There's this new technology originating from Ontario. That's advanced light rapid transit. Let's give that a shot. And then Vancouver's going to be hosting a World's Fair in the 1980s. Let's put this all together. And that's how you ended up with the SkyTrain eventually. It was a very expensive system. And that's where all the critics came out at the time and said, you should have stuck with light rail. Vancouver can't afford this. And they got funding from all levels of government. And then they said, hey, you know what? 1986, the World Fair is coming. And guess what the theme is? Transportation and communication. What better way to show off this fancy Canadian technology by bringing it to the World's Fair, where you get dignitaries like royalty, presidents, prime ministers, all coming here to see this. And that could be a boom for Ontario if they were to sell this product.
Ontario wasn't the only one showcasing stuff. As Stephen Gordon, who went to Expo 86, explains, other countries got into the transport fun as well.
Of course, the theme was transportation, so there was a lot of cool. Japan had their SST there, that a short section that you could go on the magnetic rails. Back and forth. Obviously, you couldn't get really fast, just being a short section. But I mean, everything was cool. I mean, to me, when it had of all the expos, it's probably really blessed that they had this in Vancouver.
Now, as fancy as all those pavilions were, the backbone of transportation to get people into Expo 86 was the SkyTrain, and it used a little special method to do so, as Stephen explains.
At Stadium SkyTrain, of course, you look over to where you have that track over there, and that was a special train that you would board from Expo 86 to go to Waterfront, and then you would go to Canada Place, which was part of the Expo 86. So they had these special trains that would whisk you back and forth.
After learning about everything with Expo 86, it sounded really awesome. It's in Vancouver, it's in my hometown, and all these countries coming in to showcase all this brand new technology at the time. That sounds so awesome, and it's something I very much wish I could experience, and I wish I could go back to that time.
So, Nick, we both ride the SkyTrain, right? And I feel like it'd be fair to say that it's reliable, efficient, it gets you there on time, but most importantly, it gets you there safely, right?
Yeah, over the last few months of me taking it, I've had completely no problems, apart from obvious construction delays that, that's supposed to happen. It's been pretty smooth sailing for me.
But, Nick, what if I told you it wasn't always this way?
I couldn't agree with you more. As we're about to hear from Darcy Rivard-Kinder, she and many others were quite concerned.
I think that was, for me, for sure, that was an issue. I don't think it was something that, I wouldn't have talked about that with other passengers at the time, but definitely other friends and family would the car continue going or would it stop? And I know in the early days, I can't remember if it was right at the beginning, but I do remember definitely reading and hearing about stories where, the train would just stop on the track somewhere and people would be kind of stranded, I guess is the word to use, for a period of time. That fear of having to get somewhere or wanting to get somewhere and then being derailed, I guess, for lack of a better term, because of the uncertainty of whether it was off the tracks or whether there was, some mechanical issue that prevented the cars from moving. And then, of course, no other cars can come behind. And that was just always, I think, sort of in the back of my mind, more so years ago than now when I visit Vancouver and I ride the SkyTrain. It's not something I think about. I don't worry about going over the bridge portion. It just doesn't seem to be as much of an issue for me personally, I guess, when I ride it, versus then it was like a big thing. Oh my gosh, are we going to get stuck between stations? And then how will we get down? Or do you just sit there? And then, of course, there's no washroom. So if you're there for a period of time, then what happens?
When they first announced it, when they did the demonstration line along Terminal Avenue at Main Street, they were showing off, hey, okay, go for a ride here. And by the way, hey, no one drives this. There's an operator somewhere, and they push all the buttons and make this thing go. And so they tried to ease the public into this. So it wasn't so bad by the time we got to the launch. But for a lot of people who had never heard of such things or are not from the area, this was like some newfangled technology here. Will it last or will it just all fall apart after the World's Fair?
And fall apart, it did not. For the last 37 years, SkyTrain has been the autonomous heartbeat, the lifeblood of the city, and a cultural icon for all of Vancouver.
Now, Nick, we were both born in 2004, making us 18 years old, and we've only really benefited from the modern version of SkyTrain. And we weren't able to experience what it was like back in the old days with all the hope, with all the dreams. But now, Nick, we were both born in 2004, and we've only known a city of Vancouver with a SkyTrain. It seems inseparable from the actual city itself. We're not able to go back to 1985 when the hope of SkyTrain was just that, hopes and dreams. Rob Chu was able to help us imagine what it would have been like. He brought us some original marketing materials from the SkyTrain, and, well, we kind of got to geek out a little bit. And I'll finish this out with reading the top of the buzzer. All systems go for SkyTrain launch December 11th. The construction phase of your new rapid transit system has now reached completion. Highly trained personnel are ready to take their positions. All transit are go. Is that proper English? Oh, all systems are go. I'm not reading it. All systems are go for an event that will launch a new age in transit service for British Columbia. Well, if that's not predictive, I don't know what is. And on that note, thank you, Rob, for joining us.
Well, welcome to the welcome to the future. Thank you. Thanks, Richard. And thanks, Nick.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for listening to Autonomous Heartbeat, the origins of the Vancouver SkyTrain.
And a big, massive thanks to our wonderful guests, Rob Chu from the Transit Museum Society and Canadian Transit Heritage Foundation,
Stephen Gordon,
and Darcy Rivard Kinder.
Research, production, and hosting done by me, Richard Davis.
And me, Nicholas Poitras.
Mixed and recorded in Control B at 2 Roper Avenue. Clips from our intro and outro are from the documentaries Going to Town from 1985 and On Track from 1983. Permission for use of these clips was provided by BC Transit.
And a special thanks to Ian Foote and Aaron Laforet
for saving our asses.
It seems as though the city and the people who are the city have bloomed to fulfill a new sense of destiny, to greet a beckoning capacity for urban maturity, and share it with the world.